Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going over Course Technologies JavaScript 6th edition, the PowerPoints. We are now up to Chapter 8 of 12, and I'm on page 533, Manipulating Data in Strings and Arrays. In this chapter, our objectives are to be able to manipulate strings with properties and methods of the string object, create regular expressions and use them to validate user input, manipulate arrays with properties and methods of the array object, and convert between strings and arrays and between strings and JSON, which is an acronym that stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So a string is any text or anything that you put between a set of double quotes or a set of single quotes. And there are some examples that you can see on the screen right here. When you parse a string, notice what it says, extracting characters or substrings from a larger string. Well, typically then what you want to do is you might, let's give an example. Let's say I wanted to know, for whatever reason, how many times the word liberty was used in, let's say, the Declaration of Independence. So I could extract those characters, or really that substring, the word liberty, from a larger string, which would be the Declaration of Independence. Now, earlier, and I don't know if I still have it up here or not, but earlier, we looked at the number class, and we looked at, before that, we looked at the date class. All right, but if we go over here to where we have these objects and I type in, I'm hoping at least, string, might be strings, string. There's all the different things we can do with the string class. And you notice there's quite a few. All right, and finally, if I come back here, I'm going to try this. I don't know again if this will work or not, but I'm going to put array. And there's the different things we can do with the array class. And you can see, again, there's about the same number as what we had for string. So really, as I mentioned to you previously, going out to right here, let's save this. But going out, well, that's pretty big. That's a little small. That should be about right, I think. There, that'll work. That'll work. So going out to here, in other words, going out to https://developer.mozilla.org/enus/docs/web/javascript/reference/global objects. All right, so if I go out to there, and then I want to just show you something else. So if I go out to there, and I'm just going to open up a new thing here. Sometimes when you go out to these sub areas, there we go. So it's got built-in objects. So notice what we can get here. Again, there's array. We've already mentioned number. We've talked about regular expressions, which we'll hit on in this chapter, strings, etc. So you'll notice there are a good 50, 30, 40, 50, whatever, different objects that we can talk about. And from there, again, you can go on and you can do the slash, and you can put in array, or you can put in something else. All right, so that's an excellent place to start. All right, you may want to format strings in different ways. The example that they show right here, if we didn't put this backslash here, and we put today's forecast with just 3 single quotes, we get an error message because the system sees the beginning single quote and then it would see the next one and think that string is over with. So it wouldn't know how to handle the rest of it. But what we're doing right here is we're escaping the meaning of, or giving it a different meaning. We're saying we want this to not be a delimiter for a string. We want this to literally just be an apostrophe. All right. Now we could have gotten around that without doing that at all if we used a double quote here and a double quote here. All right. But sometimes you want to put double quotes within double quotes, single quotes within single quotes, or whatever. All right. Other special characters. Remember, when we say UTF-8, in our character set up at the top of our HTML file, what we're saying then is we're using the Unicode character set. And you've got literally over 100,000 different characters you can use with that. Again, there are a boatload of methods that you can use with strings. All right, notice from char code constructs a text string from a Unicode character codes. So, examples. All right. Some of these are just things that'll make sense. 2 lowercase, 2 uppercase. I end up using this all the time. So notice here we've got agency equals NOAA, and we say agency equals agency dot 2 uppercase. So we're calling the 2 uppercase string method, which will convert this to this. All right. The length property will count the number of characters that are in a string. We do begin counting with 0, but even if I say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's still 10 things. It's just the first one is 0 rather than 1. So the length property as mentioned here returns the number of characters in the string. One of the biggest things, we looked at it a little bit before, but I want to say it again, one of the biggest things that you end up working with strings are substrings. And a substring is basically a string within a string. All right, I gave you the example earlier of looking through the Declaration of Independence to see how many times the word liberty was in there. I might want to go and look through literally a list of 1 million names, and I want to see how many times there's a last name of Williams in there, something like that. Years ago, I was an electronic data interchange programmer analyst for a company in Rockford, Illinois. And I ended up, one of the first projects they had me work on is one of their biggest customers was Caterpillar Tractor. And Caterpillar, the division that I was working with in this company, was doing about $30 million a year worth of business with the company. All right, so it was a nice chunk of change. What I had to do was I had to write an application that would go through, this was years ago, but much of the company was still kind of antiquated. In other words, they would get their orders in, and you may or may not even know what I'm talking about here, but back in the, quote, olden days, unquote, like in the 90s or whatever, in the 80s and 70s, quite often you'd print stuff from a really huge printer, be more of a dot matrix type printer, but a really huge one, and you'd get this green and white ugly paper that would be serrated, would have holes in it, etc. Well, what I did was I had to take electronic copies of those orders, and every day go through them, and the orders could have been hundreds of pages, and I had to look for 2 different distinct part numbers because I had to prepare reports for management based on those 2 part numbers. So I was going through and trying to extract characters and substrings from something that's just much bigger. All right, again, I'm not going to go over each one of these. My suggestion, again, and we've talked about this before, is when you're looking through that, all right, again, page 543 in the book has got all the stuff from table 8.1, so the stuff that you see here and here, okay, is to create yourself a little document an HTML document, and then add some JavaScript to it, or even better yet, create an external JavaScript file, put a bunch of strings in it, and start playing with some of these functions. Again, that is how you learn. All right. So here's some examples of things that you can do with this. Again, I don't want to confuse you, but just take a look at it. It, to me, does not make much sense to spend time and go through examples that are in here. Again, you learn by creating a document, putting your own examples in there, and just playing around with it. That's the best way to learn basically anything. There's two types of search methods, and as it says, there are those that contain or return the numeric position in the string starting from 0. And there are those that return a numeric position in a string, and with most of these you can go forward or backwards. So you can search a string in a forward direction, which means you want to put a positive number, or you can search a string backwards, which means a negative number. Now typically with these things, if it turns out that you are trying to search a string for something else, so you want to see if a string contains a substring. If it does not, most of the time what's going to happen then is it's going to return -1, which means the absence of any kind of value. So again, you can return a numeric position, or you can return a character itself. All right? And again, the way you learn this, I can't say this too many times, is to make yourself a simple little program and play around with it. Try to break it. Once you get everything to work, then break it. Put in stuff that doesn't make sense. Sometimes when you do that, you'll get error messages. Other times when you do that, you just won't get any output whatsoever, which means the system just didn't know how to handle what you put in. So here's a couple more. Slice. Some of these methods you can use, and just so you know too, when we talk about strings, a string is a single collection of characters within double quotes or single quotes. So I could go and I could make a string. For example, I could come in here and type in let's put that back. I could come in here and say var names equal, and I could say Jeff, comma Sandy, comma Taylor, comma Mackenzie, comma Chloe, which are the members of my family. And that's totally fine. Now, there are ways and there are methods where I can convert that string into an array, where it'll end up being something along the lines of this. It's as though I came in and said var, we'll just call it names2. And then that would be equal to an array, which would have in it Jeff, Sandy, Taylor, Mackenzie, and Chloe. Now you might look at that and say, fine, Jeff, but why? Who cares about converting a string to an array, or maybe going the other direction? Well, it might be that you've got this string, but you want to have you have to do a bunch of manipulation with that string, and you can't, because there are no string methods that do what you want them to do. But you look around and you discover, oh, there's not string methods that do what I want to do, but there are some array methods. So you convert your string to an array, and the reverse could happen also. All right. Again, more examples. And I'd strongly suggest, if you say, well, I don't even know where to get started with this, fine. Then create a simple HTML page with just a button on it, like I've been doing. Then have an external JavaScript file and start keying in some of these examples. But when you get done with the stuff, do some document.writes with them so you can see exactly what's being produced. Okay, you can replace. All right, that's almost like doing a search and replace inside of a word processing program. All right, so we're replacing president with vice president, so that would become vice president at whitehouse.gov. You learned a long time ago that you can combine strings together using the plus sign, which in this case would be the string concatenation operator. There also is, if you don't want to do that, there actually is a concat method that you can use. Is there an advantage? No. Again, good, bad, or indifferent, what I keep saying to you is there are a lot of different methods that quite often will do the same thing. So try them and see which one makes the most sense to you, which is the nicest one, etc., and use that one. Just because there's 10 different ways of doing things doesn't mean you have to use all 10. You might try all 10 to find the one way or maybe the two ways that make the most sense to you, but then I'd stick with those. When you compare strings, all right, I would use the triple equal sign instead of the double equal sign, because remember, the double equal sign means equality and the triple equal sign means equality and identity. So it makes sure not only that they're the exact same contents, but that the type is the same between them. Notice there's also a locale compare, which compares strings based on the language that you're using. And you'll notice with that it's a case sensitive. So that usually there's something like local compare ignore or something like that you can use to do that. All right. The next thing that's discussed in here is they start to get into talking about regular expressions. And it begins in the book on around page 555. But I want to mention one of my favorite sites first, okay? And it's one that I tend to go back to and use quite a bit. So I don't need that anymore or that, and I'll just use it here. And it is regular-expressions.info. Okay? So there it is, and I'm going to put it on my list that I have been creating for you, which I've been a little derelict in keeping up, but there it is. http://www.regular-expressions.info. If you just put in regular-expressions.info, you get there just as well. All right. So if we look at that particular site, it looks like this. Not much to look at. In fact, I'd say it's kind of an ugly site, but it's very well done. So if I want to find out how to use regular expressions, period, I could start with a quick start or a tutorial. All right. I've got a regular expression reference right here that I can use right here to find out how to use different things with regular expressions, how they're used, what they mean, etc. But the other thing I like is where it says tools and languages. All right. I can go down and I can find, oh, look, JavaScript. So this, using regular expressions with JavaScript. All right. And you can see there's quite a bit. Now, it may not answer every question you have. All right. But this site, the regular-expressions.info, and again, it's not case sensitive, but if you put it in just like that, but in all lowercase, you'll get there too. So the author here defines regular expressions as patterns used for matching and manipulating strings according to specified rules. That's really a good definition. With scripting languages, a lot of what you do with that is used for validating data that you submit in forms, such as, what if I say that there is a phone number, and that phone number has to be in a format number, hyphen, number, hyphen, number, 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 number. Okay? I did want to mention to you, and I just, like I said, I want you to see this. There is another site that's called, I believe, it's HTML5 patterns.com. I could be wrong on that, but we'll find out. No, that wasn't it. It's HTML5 pattern, not patterns. Sorry. So again, if I go here, it doesn't have everything, but notice, for example, again, phone numbers. And I come down near, well, there's some phone number stuff. There's USA. All right, so I'm going to grab what is there, just so we can start getting into what these regular expressions here are all about. All right, so I'm coming in here and I'm doing this. Now that may or may not make a lot of sense to you. All right, so I'm going to assume right now that it doesn't make hardly any, or it doesn't make any sense to you. Okay? This \d right there, that means it must be a digit. In other words, a 0 through 9. So that means, and then in the curly braces here, that's how many. So I have to have 3 digits, followed by a hyphen, followed by 3 digits, followed by a hyphen, followed by 4 digits. So again, the format, in other words, must be number, 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 dash, number, 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 dash, number, 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 number. All right? And hopefully looking at that, it makes some sense to you. Now, how else could I have done this? I could have said, put in any digit from 0 through 9, and I want 3 of those, followed by a hyphen, followed by any digit from 0 to 9, and I want 4 of those, or 3 of those, I'm sorry, 3 of those, followed by a hyphen, followed by any digit 0 to 9, and I want 4 of those. All right, so just like the last example, all right, this one here also will give you that pattern. And there are other ways to do it as well. All right, so kind of keep this in mind as we start looking at it. There are entire books that are dedicated to the concept of regular expressions. So really and truly, the topic itself, it's fairly complex just because there's so much. And quite often there's so many ways of doing the same thing. All right. Now it says that regular expressions must begin and end with forward slashes. No, regular expressions typically begin and end with forward slashes, but they don't have to be forward slashes, and you can use other things. All right, there's different ways that you can create and work with regular expressions. This is what I want you to understand. Okay? There are a lot of built-in. In fact, let's go back. And now that I'm sure that yep. Oh, well, we don't have it. No, we don't. Let's go back to that Mozilla that we were at before, and we're going to put in here REGEXP, which means regular expression. All right? And it shows all the different regular expression stuff that you can utilize. All right, so that's just another place that you can go to look for information. What you get in this chapter is a very, very good introduction to regular expressions. That said, all right, now that said, there's a lot more to it, so I'm sure there's things in here that are probably, there are things in here that are not on those sites that I've shown you, and vice versa. So when you create a regular expression, you can set it up by creating a brand new regular expression object if you want to do that. Most people don't because it's too much work. All right. When you work with regular expressions, there's typically two different methods that you're going to be using with these regular expressions. They're shown here on the slide. All right. And they are test and exec. Okay, so you're able to go through and, as it says right there, the test returns a value of true if the string contains what you're looking for, otherwise it returns false. But the real power, as mentioned here, of regular expressions comes when you start using different patterns with them. Notice there's an email pattern. I already gave you that HTML5 pattern.com. There are other sites that are out there. In fact, you can Google and you can set it up. There are sites out there that if you put in something into a text box, it'll tell you if it's a valid this or if it's a valid that type of an idea. So as it says here, regular expression patterns, which is what we're getting into now, consist of literal characters and meta characters. Meta characters, as mentioned right there, are special characters that you use inside of these pattern matchings. All right, here's some of the meta characters. Notice that if you put a period in, that matches any one character, even, any one character, whatever it is. This says that the next character is a literal value. We'll see that in just a minute. This says starts with, all right? This says ends with. So if I did something like this, so let's say that I wanted to set up my own pattern. And I did this. I came through here and I said pattern equals, and I want to check for the word hello. Okay? I can do that. That's setting up a pattern like that. That might have to be in quotes. I don't remember, to be honest with you. But we'll just leave it the way it is for right now. But that'll find hello, whether it's at the that'll find hello. In fact, let's do this. Okay, that'll find hello. It'll find jello. It'll find mellow, etc. But what if, so that would find like, hello, my name is Jeff, or my name is Jeff, hello. It'll find either one of those. But if I want the word hello, and I want it to be at the beginning of whatever it is I'm checking, I put that in there. If I want it to be hello and I want there to be absolutely nothing else after it, I can do that. That means it starts with hello, with the H in hello, and it ends with the O in hello. All right? Some other things that are discussed in here. Again, you saw these brackets. I put that in there, and I showed you how you could use that for 0 through 9 also. If you have the caret character, it means the beginning of the line, except if you put it within these brackets, then it means except for. So don't include those characters. All right? So those are your major, what are called your major meta characters. All right, and that's also shown in your book on the top of page 557. So again, period matches any single character in a pattern. When you put this caret character in and it's not in brackets, matches at the beginning of the string, $ matches it at the end of the string. All right, there's anchors that you can use with this stuff. This gets a little bit confusing, but really and truly, and I'm not just saying this, it's not that confusing when you work with it for a while. If you put a question mark someplace, it's optional. All right, optional meaning, no, don't have to have it, but you can have it. If you put a plus sign into something, it means that one or more of the following must match this. If you put an asterisk in, it means 0 or more can match this. All right? If I put in this, You saw this before when I used that with the, I used that thing right there with the phone numbers, the first one. We put a 3 in there, which meant the area code, another 3, which meant the exchange, and a 4, which meant the other 4 numbers. All right. If I want a range, this says n comma. So this says if I put 3 comma, that means at least 3. All right. And if I want a range, for instance, if I put in 5 comma 8, it would work for either 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. All right. You can play with sub-expressions in here. This is another one of those chapters where we can talk about it, but until you go through the examples that are in the book, it's probably not going to help you all that much. You saw this earlier, that \d, which meant any digit. If that's a lowercase d. If I use an uppercase D, it means any non-digit. W means any alphanumeric character, so any letter or number. Small w. Big W means anything that's not alphanumeric. S means any white space character, so it could be a space bar, a tab, or a carriage return. That's a little s. With the big S, it means any printable character, so any non-white space character. All right, so we've jumped up pretty much in here. We're up all the way to about page 570. By default, when you use this stuff, it's only going to match the first instance of something that you're looking for. All right, but if you put at the end, you put this thing inside of forward slashes, as we talked about. But after the last forward slash, if you put a small g in there, okay, that means global. That means find every occurrence. Also, when you do regular expressions, by default, they're case sensitive. If you don't want to care about the case, so if you want to ignore the case, as it's called, all right, then you, rather than putting a G on the end, you put an I on the end for ignore. There's global, there's ignore case. If you want to say that search multiple lines of text, you can put an M on there. You can use none of these, any one, any two, or all three if you want to. And the order in which you put them in does not matter. All right, let's jump into talking about manipulating arrays. All right, so this is the bottom of page 577 in the book. And as it says there, you can use the array class length property and the different methods that are in the array class. One way that you can create, you know how to create an array already. We've already talked about this. There are multiple ways of doing it. What you see on the screen right here, and this starts on the page 577 and it goes on to page 578, these are some, not all, but some of the major methods that you can use with the array class. So you can use pop, and what that does is it removes the last element from the end of the array. You can use push, which adds one or more elements to the end of an array. You can use shift, which is sort of like pop, but whereas pop removes the last, shift removes the first. And you can use unshift, which is kind of the opposite of push. But where push adds new values to the end, unshift adds new values to the beginning. All right. You can sort an array, and you can sort it in either arithmetic order or in alphabetic order. After you sort an array, if you use reverse on it, it's like a reverse sort. All right. You can use slice to copy one portion of an array to another array. You can use splice, which just grabs whatever part of the array that you want. And again, there's other things that you can use as well. Typically, when you start to use an array, if you want to work your way through it, all right, let's take a look at a quick example. All right, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do this really or not, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let's see what time it is. 3:33. This will be close. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start to create, I'm going to create a new HTML5 file. Oops. And we'll call this array example. We haven't looked at some real code for a while, so very similar to things that we've written in the past. Okay, whoops, there we go. 2 more lines and we're done. In my body and in my HTML tag. All right, so I'm going to save this, and for right now, I'll just save it to the desktop, and as I have been, I'll call it index.html. All right, so there's that file. Let's run it and see if at least I do get my button on here that says run program. Won't do anything yet because there's no program, there's no run program function. But that's good, that's a start. So let's come in here now and we'll do some work with JavaScript. I'm going to come in and I'm going to create an array at the top. I'm going to say var numbers equal bracket bracket. So we're making an array called numbers. All right. Now I'm going to say function main. All right. And let's see. What we'll want to do here is we'll want to take and let's take that array and let's fill it with 25 random numbers. All right. And although I know how to do this, I always forget how. So JavaScript random numbers. All right, so there's a random method. And I want the random numbers to be between 1 and 100. So I'm going to use this example that they show right here that I'm grabbing right from w3schools.com. In fact, there's one that right there. Return a random number between 1 and 100. Okay, so I'm grabbing that and I'm going to say for loop control variable equals 0. Loop control variable is less than 25. Loop control variable plus plus. So I'm saying run through this 25 times. All right, and I'm going to say numbers sub LCV, so the current one is equal to. So what that will do is that will create an array for me, and that array will have 25 random numbers in it, each number between 1 and 100. But I want you to say, you know what, Jeff? I sort of see what you see, but understand what you're saying, but I don't believe you. Okay. So after I go and print those out, all right, after I go, I'm sorry, and put those numbers into the array, now I'm going to say, let's create another variable in here. Var str just stands for string, and there's nothing in it. All right, so I'm going to say str plus equals the current value that I just have in there, which is numbers LCV, and then we'll add to that a BR tag. Okay. All right. And then when I'm all done, I want to do an alert of str. And if you don't know what I'm doing, if you have absolutely no idea, well, let's look at it and run it and see if it's going to do anything. All right, so I want to come in here. I'm going to call this array.js. So I have to make sure I bring that array.js in here. So I need a script tag. My source is array.js and in my script tag. All right, so let's see what this does. All right. There's my numbers. Well, it didn't like the BR tag, but you can see there are 25 numbers in there, so we'll see if we can fix that. I don't know if this will work or not, but I'm going to change that BR tag to a \n for new line, and I'm going to see if that makes it a little easier to read. There's my 25 numbers. So you notice that there's 25 numbers if I counted through there, and they're random. If I run this same thing again, notice 81, 32, 53, etc. If I run it again, I'm going to get 25 different numbers because they're random. All right? So, just running through this quickly, what I've been able to show you, all right, what I've been able to show you is how to create an array, how to fill it up with random numbers, and then how to print them out afterwards. Well, that's all fine. All right, but what else might I want to do with those numbers? Maybe they're test scores. Okay? So maybe I want the total of all 25 of those added up. Okay? So while I'm doing this in here, I can create some more variables. I can have a variable in here that's called sum, and I'll set that equal to 0. And I'll have another variable in here that's called average, and I'll set that equal to 0. All right? So sum plus equals this number sub v. So every time I'm creating a brand new number, I'm adding it to my sum. All right? So then I can say average equals my sum divided by my array dot length. And that should give me the average. So I'm going to say alert, and I'm printing that out. Okay? So I've got all that stuff in there. So I'm going to say alert string plus the average is plus AVG. And I might have to put in a line break there. Let's see now what we've done. Refresh, run the program. There are my numbers. What's at the bottom? The average is 50.88, and it wasn't a line break. So it added up all of those scores, and it divided it by 25. If my numbers are between 1 and 50, you would think that my average, typically, if these are truly random, would be somewhere around 50. And you can see in this case it is. All right, so can I put a \n in there? Will that help, or will that not help? There's my numbers, and there's my average. All right, just showing you some of the versatility of being able to work with arrays. Now, I'm not really showing you in here slice and splice and all the other stuff because we're working with numbers. All right, but this could easily, you could just change this and make this an array and put in names or something like that, and then use a lot of the stuff that's in here if you were so inclined. All right, because many of the examples that they give in here are done utilizing strings, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. In fact, they're so comprehensive that I'm trying to supplement these by giving you some examples that also have some numeric values in them instead of strings. We already mentioned shift and unshift. Okay. We talked about the length property. I just showed it to you on the last one. That program. Okay, I talked about pop and push. Talked about splice. talked about sort. So what if I want that array that we just looked at? What if I want it in order? I'm going to do it, and it's going to be wrong. So, but I'm doing it on purpose this way. Okay? So there we've got everything, right? I think everybody'd agree with that. But now what I'm going to do is when we print this out right here, first I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say numbers dot sort. So I'm telling it to sort the array in order, or at least that's what I think. All right, so let's run it again, and look at this. It's not in order. Yes, it is. Notice how the ones, then the twos, then the threes, because it does what's called a lexicographical type of sort. It's sorting it, and it's saying, oh, there's a 1 and there's nothing after that, so that's less than a 1 with a 0 after it, and that's less than a 1 with a 2 after it. So if I want to sort like this, but I want to be able to sort, and I want to sort utilizing a numeric sort rather than this lexicographical one that I just showed you, well, again, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say how to sort numbers in JavaScript. And it's going to, one of the things that's in there is the array.sort for W3 schools. And when you use this on numbers, you literally have to add this. Okay? And what that means is compare every number and flip them, so you're basically going to sort in alphabetic order. I'm going to just grab that thing that you see right here, that function that you see right there, and I'm going to go to my program, and where I have this, I'm going to add that. So I added that function, A, B, etc. That's all I added was this right here. Everything that you see here in blue, or gray, I should say. Save that. Now, you saw what this looked like. And I told you it wasn't really in the right order, but let's now run it. Okay, it did not like something I put in here. Oh, I've got those curly braces right here. The parens. Don't want those. Sorry. All right, so let's try it again. Refresh and run it. Notice now how it's in regular order. It is in ascending order. And I've got the average at the bottom, but now it's in order. What if I wanted it? What if I wanted it, all right, and I wanted it to be in descending order? All right, so you just saw what that was. There's two ways I can do this. One way is I've just did this. I said numbers.sort, which is fine, but if I, on the next line, say numbers.reverse, all right, that means reverse everything that I just did right here. So let's see what that looks like. Stop that run, refresh. See how now it's in descending order? Quite often you want that with numbers. So that's one way I could have done that. All right. So I'm going to come back to here and I'm going to say ascending order. And then I'm going to, whoops, that's not the one I want, sorry. So that's down here. So I'm going to say ascending sort, because you just saw that. All right. And then reverse the ascending sort. And that worked just fine. You saw that. You just saw all of it. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to comment out all of that code that I just put in right here. Okay? So now it's not doing any sorting whatsoever. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this line right here. That line. That told us to sort it in ascending order. You may have been able to figure out what I'm going to do already. I don't know. But instead of saying return A minus B, I'm going to return B minus A. We're just going to do that. Again, let's stop this. Let's refresh, run it, and notice again I am in descending order. So that is yet another way that you can do this. All right. That, again, good, bad, or indifferent, you're provided with multiple ways all the time of trying to do the same types of operations. All right, so I showed you a little bit about sorting in here. And reverse for that matter. Concat will allow you to combine two different arrays together if you want to, so they've got providences and they've got territories, etc., and then they concatenate them together so you've got all of them together. All right? All right. Converting between data types. And let's see where we are in the book here. I'm on the bottom of page 588. And they mention there another common task while working with strings and arrays is to convert them to different data types. So again, if you want to be able to go from a string to an array to a string, an object to a string, or a string to an object, these are methods that you can use. Split, all right, takes a string and converts it into an array. It's what I showed you before where I put that string in there that I had names, and I set that equal to inside of double quotes, Jeff, comma, Sandy, comma, Taylor, comma, Mackenzie, comma, Chloe, all right, double quote. If we'd run the split method on it, it would create it into an array with 5 elements, those 5 names. Here's an example. So you're converting a single string into an array with multiple elements. Join takes an array, it's just the reverse. It takes an array and it converts it into a string. When you do that, you have to tell it the separator. I believe if you don't tell it a separator, it makes it a single blank space. All right? So here we're going in the reverse. We're taking this array, we're running the join on it, we're turning it into, instead of an array with multiple elements, we're turning it into a single string. Okay, so there's a lot of ways that you can always do this. You can use the toString method as mentioned there to convert an array into a string. And the JavaScript object notation, this is important stuff right here. I'm up to page 592. We only have a few pages left in the actual chapter and a few slides. But JavaScript object notation, what we're going to talk about, it's either in the next chapter or is it the next chapter? Is it chapter 9? No. When we get to chapter 11, we're going to be talking about something that's called AJAX. And that's an acronym that stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. All right? Well, what that is it's a way that you can just update part of a web page as opposed to updating the whole page. It's not a new thing, but the way it's being used is somewhat new. What I want to get to, though, with you is for years when people talked about AJAX, Asynchronous JavaScript and XML, all right, that's what the X in AJAX stood for, was XML. But now, quite often you find people using JSON more than XML, but you don't say AJAJ, AJAJ, although you can find it, all right? But JavaScript object notation is a way to represent JavaScript as a string. It looks a lot like an object that we talked about before. The nice thing about using JSON, before we get into it, just so you know, the website for JSON, let me close some of these. The website, though, for JSON, very simply, is just json.org, json.org. So why am I not? Okay. JSON.org. Again, not a very nice looking, not a very nice looking site, but a very functional site. And if we go down, they talk about the different languages that use it. And again, you can go down and you can find JavaScript, JSON. So I can go here and I can find out more. And it doesn't look like much, but as it says, there's the standard. And if you want it, okay, you can bring up the PDF and you can find out a lot more about it. So JSON is basically a way of looking at a JavaScript object and using it as like it's a string. Okay, there's only two major methods that you use in JSON, and they're parse, which converts a string to an object, and stringify, which is the opposite. It converts an object to a string. All right. Don't worry about right now if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because when we go over some examples in class, I believe it will make much more sense. So there's stringify. All right. So convert an object to a string. That's going to convert this to this. All right. One of the reasons that people like using JSON rather than XML is JSON is very close to the way JavaScript objects look anyway. There's parse, and again, whereas JSON was converting an object to a string, parse converts a string to an object. And an example. So we're done with the chapter. This chapter was about strings and about arrays. We looked at strings and we looked at some of the methods for a string. Again, I can't tell you this too much, that when you go out here and we go out, as we talked about before, to the Mozilla Developer Network. So if you forget all this stuff, just type in Mozilla Developer Network and it'll bring you here also. And if I type in string, again, those are all the string methods, and there's basically an online tutorial, if you read through this, on using strings. The other thing we talked about were arrays, so if I change that from string to array, I'm going to find all the stuff regarding an array. So we went through some of the different string methods. We went through some of we went through the string class. We went through a lot of stuff on regular expressions, and I talked about regular-expressions.info, how you can use that, and we went over a lot of stuff on the array class. That pretty much is everything that we went over in the chapter. We ended by talking a little bit about JSON. All right. So when I come back and go through the next chapter in here, the next chapter, that's not what I want. That is probably going to do one or maybe two more chapters tonight, but we're up to chapter 9. So chapter 9, the one that we'll go over next, is on managing state and information security. Let me get back to that one. All right, and then chapter 10, if we have time to do that today, will be on programming for touchscreens and mobile devices. And I'll be back with those as soon as I can.